Right, 10, 9, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
It's officially been ratified with the signatories of at least 164 countries. The European Parliament has welcomed this motion. And as the curtains fall on the first ever Global Compact Summit, I will be taking stock of this summit with the new Migration and Development Ambassador Arturo. Take stock of the summit. Thank you so much, Ambassador. Maybe what will you say about this two-day summit here in Marrakesh?
Well, first of all, thank you, and through you, thank you to the African media for the interest of Ecuador and the new chairmanship of the Global Forum of Migration and Development for the next year. We're living an historic moment. There are many things happening at the same time. 3 years ago at the United Nations, where I was ambassador, we could not think of a possibility of a negotiation like this. Countries talking about an issue, migration, that they consider that it is only inside their own the Ministry of Interior or only inside their own sovereignty. But now they have decided, they have recognized that this is an international issue that needs to be coordinated. And so the Global Compact has been already adopted, and the next step is the most important one. This is not the end. This is the beginning. This signature means that now countries will have to start to implement different ways of coordination among them in order to be able to have a safer migration, a migration that has based on human rights. And for that, we as the Global Forum on Migration and Development have made some proposals that will allow us to really change the paradigms that exist at this moment in migration. We are proposing that this new momentum allows us to really understand what means shared responsibility, but based on human rights. This is an opportunity also to include all stakeholders, not just the states. This is not a process that is just led by states. This is a process in which all stakeholders, not just the civil society, but also the academia, the youth forum, the mayors forum, and in general, everybody who is in one way or another involved in the migration issue has to have a voice at the same level. So how do we implement this pact? Today we adopt it and tomorrow we forget it. Where are we going to implement it? How? Which is the space? The answer is the GFMD, the Global Forum on Migration and Development, that Ecuador will start to chair from tomorrow.
Just for the sake of our viewers at home who are watching this Facebook Live, perhaps maybe clarify the difference between the Global Forum on Migration Development vis-a-vis the Global Compact on Migration, because these are maybe two different things and maybe someone back at home could not be understanding.
It is, in fact, the Global Forum is an effort that has 10 years already. When nobody wanted to talk about migration, then we have to come up with an idea. Let's talk about migration in the field of development. So it was accepted, but not as part of the United Nations. So we've been a flexible, informal space where countries can discuss about different topics that have to do with migration in a non-binding way. Now, the Global Compact itself is a much bigger effort that try to put countries together now to commit themselves into the 23 or most of the 23 objectives that have been prepared for the countries. But this is not binding. They should work according to their possibilities, according to the development of their own regions. And then we can talk about Africa, for example. One of the proposals that we have is to take the Global Forum to the regions so they can implement the Global Pact. So it's two different things. Bringing this space to the stakeholders, depending on the level of development of their policies, of their legislation, in what has to do with migration. So there is one thing called the platform for partnerships at the Global Forum, and this is a space where countries can get together with other actors. And if you talk about financing, for example, remittances, then it is the place where you put together, you sit together, the different interests existing in this fact. Yes, this has to do with the needs of the people, the needs of the family staying at home, the needs of the migrants in the countries of destination, but it also means business for banks and for other entities. So if you can put them together and regulate some kind of coordination in which there is a win-win situation, then it is possible to work in a better way. We have called it a special place in this specific field that is like a laboratory, that is called the marketplace. It's like what you do sometimes in business. It is not trying to make migration something similar to business, because it should be based on human rights, but it is putting together who wants to sell something and who needs to buy something, in which way and how to coordinate it, but more important than that, how to follow up the results of those agreements. And that's why also the Global Forum is very important. The compact that has been adopted has to report every 4 years. The countries that want to do so will report every 4 years. So the Global Forum gets together every 1 year, which means that it helps to prepare the countries for that report. It helps to see the countries if they are really following the right path. It helps to share experiences and see if it is possible to improve, or if there is something else that they can do for the quadriennial report, and so on. So they match perfectly in a perfect moment. This is a very important momentum for the migration environment, and the countries that have not adopted the Global Compact at this moment, they are having a stronger presence in the Global Forum, because if not, there is no other space where they can speak.
Sorry to cut you short, but if they're having a forum in the global, an impact in the Global Forum on migration development, yet they have withdrawn from the Global Compact on migration, will that create sort of a conflict between the Global Compact and between the GCM and the GFMD?
The opposite. The idea is that the Global Forum may be a way to approach countries that have not decided yet for different reasons. Some of them are political, some of them are lack of information, to little by little approach to what the other countries are doing, to be able to see results, to be able to see the potential and the need to be there. So it is like a safe space for everybody, not just countries, for everybody to be there. In Quito, we are going to have also parliaments, we are going to have the trade unions, we are going to have the labor unions, everybody that has something to say, and talking at the same level in a safe, flexible, not binding space that is the Global Forum. And in that way, our idea is that it will approach them finally to the Global Compact.
According to you, Ambassador Arturo, why do you think there's so much opposition to this deal? Why are countries, as of yesterday, we have Brazil that backed out saying that it's still trying to negotiate, it's not sure. Why do you think there's so much opposition?
Well, there are many answers. I have one that is very easy. If you look at the compact, at the first objective, it talks about the need to have the right data and information in order to make the right decisions. In the migration field, most of the decisions that are being made are based on perceptions or political reasons. So you've mentioned some countries that have had recent elections. You mentioned some countries where there will be soon some elections. So you can see that the facts have been used for political reasons, or sometimes they are just not well known, and that's why they do not use them in a way that will even be in the benefit of them. If they know that migration it's at the end a win-win situation for everybody, then they will not make those decisions that will affect them at the end, their governments, their positions. With time, as we call it, with migration intelligence, with the processing of correct information to see how much means for the world south-south migration, for example, then they will realize that political decisions on a field that should be taken care in a more technical way as a human fact that has been always with us and will continue being always with us, then they may be able to change their positions. The Global Forum for Migration and Development is a space to help that. So that is one of the reasons. That's why there's been so kind of opposition. It's been used, unfortunately, politically in some way, and the other reason is lack of correct information.
And as the GFMD, you had previously raised concerns of the legal and social inclusion of these migrants in their host countries. Has the Intergovernmental Conference that just is ending today, has it addressed some of these concerns you had raised?
Yes, it does. It does in a very smart way, I think. I've been the negotiator for Ecuador for both the Global Compact on Migration and the Global Compact on Refugees. And the way in which it's been drafted and proposed as something that the countries can accede to allows for tools, to have access to different tools in order to better integrate, for example, migrants or refugees into their own communities, as it is the case of Ecuador, as a way of development. So inclusion is one of the main elements when you talk about policies in migration, and then you have to make some important differences. It doesn't mean ask people to adapt to the new environment. It means integration that respects culture and that allows migrants to be part of the society by keeping their own culture and their own rights, because rights do not change because you have one paper or another.
And one of the objectives of this intergovernmental conference was to ensure the migrants have self-reliance, and this is in form of economy. The latest statistics indicate that migrants, there has been remittances of at least $466 billion US. It's like thrice the number that's sent to the global development aid. So what measures have you put in place to ensure this financial inclusion?
Well, first of all, as what you are saying is something that many people do not know. This is not in the media. This is not, unfortunately, in the newspapers. So it is an element of development that needs to be taken care and used in the right way. Before we were talking about south-south migration. Most of the migration, as you know, is between the south. And if you use it correctly, then the south by itself, what we call the global south, may have a lot of tools to use in order also to lose this dependence from the north. And we can all work as partners in a world in which each one have different capacities and possibilities. But this is a matter of time, this is a matter of understanding, and also a matter of making people know that it is for their own interests. Even if it is economic interests, it is for their economic and political interests to work together, to coordinate.
And bringing back this global compact to the African aspect, Morocco and African Union recently, actually on Monday, signed an agreement for the African Union Observatory for Migration and Development in Rabat. What will be their mandate, and how will this help the African countries?
Well, this is something very important, and still we go back to the importance of information, data, and to be able to process this information for correct decisions and for correct policies. What it is necessary is, as it is happening now, will happen now with Africa, to have a real spectrum of what is happening in migration. So what we're hoping is that, not part of that observatory, but we're hoping, I'm talking as a GFMD, is that by having this information, by having this possibility of discussing what is really happening in each one of the regions, then each region can formulate their own policies and decisions. In the case of Latin America, for example, our legislation and our policies are way behind respecting human rights of migrants and refugees. Ecuador is the first recipient of refugees in the whole Latin America. Maybe you didn't know that. We just received last year 900,000 people from Venezuela. From those, 400 or 300,000 have stayed in the country, and they are receiving good quality education, health, and support. And how do we do that? Through a regional coordination process that is being led by Ecuador. So if you ask Latin America to just follow one standard line, one for all continents, that it would mean regression in rights for us. Same, if you try to apply some policies that are applied in Asia to Africa, that may not just work. Even in some localities, local governments in the same country or in the same province may need to adapt specific solutions. And let's not talk about solutions, because solutions have to do with problems, and this is not a problem. This is a situation that has to be well managed. But as I said, even local governments and local communities need to work and coordinate for their own good, for the best of the people, and always based on the human rights of people, which is something we are completely forgetting in these discussions. People do not lose rights because of where they are, where they were born, or what kind of papers do you have in your pocket.
And then moving forward, this signatory has already been adopted. It's set to be presented in the New York General Assembly on December 19th. So as the GFMD, moving forward, what's your next step?
Well, we're fortunate that the PGA, the President of the General Assembly, is an Ecuadorian ambassador. So when we have our bilateral yesterday, she was telling us about the need to coordinate with the GFMD. So what she will do on the 19th is they will have the due process in the General Assembly, but after that there will be two high-level represent what it means, what potential it has, and the way in which it can work together with the effort made for the Global Compact to implement it. This has to be very clear. The GFMD is not going to implement the Global Compact. We don't want to implement it. We're going to help for implementation. We're going to be that safe place, that flexible, informal, not binding place where everybody can sit together with ideas that have an agenda for more than 1 year and are not just a political decision for the moment.
Thank you so much. We've heard it from the new presidency of the Global Forum on Migration Development, Ambassador Arturo, who was just breaking down the points of this two-day summit of the Global Compact on Migration that was taking place here in Marrakesh, Morocco. And basically he just says that he is their company GFMD is different from the GCM, and it is a safe space where they will be seeking to implement some of the objectives made on the Global Compact on Migration. I have been your reporter, Dinah Matengo, here in Marrakesh, Morocco.